All right, good morning, Bismarck, Mandan. Dakota Housing Network here. Dave Flohr, along with my co-host
Greg Larson, and the chairman of the board.
Boy, you came flying out of the chute this morning.
Yeah, what the heck?
Yeah.
Okay.
Too much caffeine?
Yeah, I guess,
okay.
Maybe. I didn't have any, though.
You just finished teaching a class, right?
I had a webinar I was doing for a lender. Yeah. So I'm ready to talk. I'm ready to talk.
All right, let's
talk.
talk.
Yeah. I'll keep talking.
All
I
right.
was talking already. I'm ready to talk some more.
All right.
Okay. Well, interest rates, Greg, they're low.
Yeah, isn't that something? Everyone said they were going to creep up when Trump
Well, that
took
darn Trump, they went way up after he got elected. They went way up. Everybody's, that guy.
You know, he mistweets kerfuffle or whatever he was looking for, and everybody's dropping interest rates.
I had no. Yeah, he mistweets a word and their interest rates go down.
That's right. I mean, everything.
What a dude.
Yeah.
But yeah, below 4% for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage.
Yeah.
You're at 3.94, which is basically what it was last week, although you thought it was a little bit higher last week.
I did.
But anyway, it's 4 and less.
It's less than
Those
4.
are for the good borrowers.
Yeah.
So you can
And
get
for
a
me,
great
it's
rate
6.8.
Yeah, for various reasons. It's 6.8 for you. We won't get into those reasons; those are private matters.
That's right.
Yes, okay.
All right.
But for everybody else, you
the
can
normal
get
people.
really great rates out there today.
Right.
Now, one thing that will possibly affect rates, and what's interesting these days is it may not affect. We don't know how it's going to affect them, good or bad. Now, normally, this piece of news, I would say, would have the effect of raising rates because everybody would think, oh, the economy's doing good, so money would come out of bonds and out of treasuries and move into the stock market. Okay, what came out today was private payrolls added 253,000 jobs in May versus a $185,000 estimate. So a big jump over what the experts thought it would be. Okay. So usually that would have people say, "Oh man, economy's doing great. Let's get out of those treasuries and bonds and let's move into the stocks," which would cause interest rates to rise because there's not as much demand for the treasuries and the bonds, so interest rates are going to go up. Okay. But the stock market kind of overvalued, in the great scheme of things.
Yep.
I mean, there's a little discussion: is it overvalued or not? So it'll be interesting to see what the big investors think and what the effect actually will be on this little piece of news will be in the next week on interest rates.
And then we had a good jobs report.
Yeah, this jobs report is like bam. So it'll be interesting to see. But maybe our president will tweet some other word incorrectly next week, and who knows what'll happen. Interest rates will go down. But I didn't know what that was. I saw this something kerfief or something.
Yeah. Well, our news guru knows what it's about.
I don't know what it was.
He meant to say one word, and I think spell check changed it for
Well,
him
Jim
or
thought it was
whatever.
coverage.
Coverage.
That he was trying to tweet something, and then it came out kerfief or something like that. And now they're getting license plates for it. And
Right, yeah.
You had a friend that tried to...
Somebody stole the or already registered the website.
Yeah. So, you had a friend that wanted to get it for a license
taken.
plate. It's always gone. Yeah. So we've got a website for it and everything. Man, I tell you, that's exciting.
There's going to be a contest for who can come up with what that word means.
Yeah. So, but it's all interesting. And then you've got, of course, his budget came out and big effect to housing. But let's be honest. There's a big... Everybody's up in arms about this budget and how it affects housing. Lots of things are cut, and that with HUD and whatnot. But we have to be honest in that this is the president's budget, and it's got to get to Congress, and then it basically just totally changes anyway.
Yeah.
It never. When was the last time a president submitted a budget and it went to Congress and it came out?
Funny you should ask.
What it was. When was it, Greg? Did it ever happen?
It was Ronald Reagan's first year in office.
Yeah.
He submitted a balanced budget, and it was approved. Hasn't happened since.
They just said, "Oh, that sounds good. Let's do that."
Let's do that.
Oh, there we go. That's an idea, isn't it? Balanced budget.
Yeah. And the last budget, I think, prior to that was one of Eisenhower's.
Okay. So basically, that was about 30 years.
Yeah, and the only reason I know that is I read it the other day on some goofy little thing.
Okay, so Reagan's first was 84.
Yeah.
So if Eisenhower was in the 50s, so that would have been about 30 years. So are we due for one? Oh, we're probably past due for a balanced budget and get one approved.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty hard to balance a budget though these days.
That's right. Unless you're in North Dakota, and then everybody pays to balance the
Well,
budget,
states have to.
Well, we do.
We do.
We're the only state
Well,
I
that's
think in
true.
the union.
Yeah,
that
states
is
should.
constitutionally required to balance the budget.
In all localities?
I don't know that. I don't know that.
You know, if the city of Bismarck or Mandan,
I don't know
do
if
they
it-
have to have balanced
I
budgets?
don't know.
Well, I don't know if it's a requirement. Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
Can't
well,
answer
somebody
that
call in 663-1270 if you know that. Maybe like a mayor or a city
like
commissioner or somebody.
Mike or someone like that.
Somebody should know. Yeah.
Well,
Call
if
and tell
anyone
us.
knows, it's Kevin Glott, the county.
Kevin knows everything.
Kevin, if you're listening, tell us what we need to know.
Yeah, Kevin would know it. Okay. So anyway, what else is going on? Real estate's pretty good.
Real estate is good. We're going to have next week. We're going to have the executive officer of the Bismarck Mandan Board of Realtors and the president, Nancy Dykert and Tricia Schlosser, and they're going to give us an in-depth report.
Oh boy!
I can tell you, across the state, it looks good.
Yeah. Well, this room is going to get smart next week.
Yeah.
I probably won't be here.
Oh man, that's going to really get smart.
And then you add those two, and it's going to be through the roof. Good thing you're here to balance it out.
Right. Keep the curve low.
Man, the roof would fly off. So anyway, just having fun there. But
yeah, so we're going to get an in-depth next week.
Well, that'll be good.
Last week, week before last, everyone was in Washington, D.C., for the mid-year meetings of the National Association of Realtors. That was interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff going on in the flood insurance realms, and we are going to have, hopefully the 22nd, if I can get them free, which will be 2 weeks from today, Austin Perez, who is he may well be the most informed guy on flood insurance, including the flood insurance people in the United States.
He probably knows more than they do. Yeah, I'd believe that.
And we're going to have him on and talk.
Okay. Well, let's see. So you're lining up the shows here, man.
Yeah.
Well, doing good. I quit sloughing off.
Well,
I was in Grand Forks last week.
Right.
I was in Grand Forks speaking to your compadres out there.
All right.
In Grand Forks doing a little training for the board of realtors, and then I spoke at their luncheon. And
did somebody get a trophy
bored
for
them to death.
Friend of
No,
first-time home buyers?
Didn't do that.
Step it up, Grand Forks.
Yep.
All right.
That was in Fargo this year. In Bismarck,
yeah.
were the winners this year. So,
Okay.
But anyway, so it was fun. I hope it didn't bore them to death or anything. They seemed like they didn't throw anything at me, so I must have been okay.
They weren't handing you your car keys.
No, it was interesting though. They have a vote coming up about a park in Grand Forks, a little teeny tiny park. I drove by it afterwards.
Surrounded by teeny homes.
No, it's surrounded by big buildings.
Okay.
But the artists in the community have created a nice little park. They've got sculptures and stuff in there. So they had there's a vote on whether they're going to keep it as a park or let a developer put condos in.
Oh.
Coming up. So they had both viewpoints.
That would be
at
interesting.
The luncheon talking. So that was interesting. Yeah. So, okay, we're going out on it's Sergeant Pepper was 50 years old
50 years
last
ago
week. Today was 50
it was released.
years. Okay.
in America.
And there's a big new box set.
Yeah.
And I guess it's pretty cool because you get all the outtakes and so if you're a big Beatles dude, that's something to look for.
Newly remastered version of all the songs.
Yeah. So I guess it's pretty interesting. So anyway, we will be back on the Dakota Housing Network. We're going to talk about tiny homes.
Right.
But first.
Speaking of tiny, or short, or small.
Short. Well, let's go with short.
Okay.
Okay. A lot of talk. People are saying we have to impeach President Trump.
Right.
There's people talking about that.
Yep.
They want him because he mistweeted a
Because
word.
they don't like him.
They don't like him, and he mistweets words.
Right.
So that leads the question, I think, to what were the shortest terms of presidents? And Elliot Eisenberg, our friend, the bow-tie economist, has got the answer for us in his file from last Friday. The president with the shortest term was William Henry Harrison, 31 days.
31 days.
And Jim, our resident expert over here, says the reason was he got sick. Giving his inaugural address.
He delivered the longest inaugural address to date.
The longest.
It was a cold, rainy day in March, I believe.
Okay.
Back then, the inaugural was in March.
Okay.
And he did it without a hat.
Oh, boy.
And I guess he was trying to be macho, whatever, trying to look presidential.
Yeah.
But he caught the bug, and he lasted about another month. That was it.
Boy, that's a lesson learned there. Be short,
That's right.
if you want a long term.
Short and get inside quick.
Yes, okay. Don't mess around. Okay, now next was James Garfield. His term lasted 199 days.
Yeah, remember the Johnny Cash song? Mr. Garfield been shot down.
Yeah, he was shot.
Yeah.
Okay. By comparison, Zachary Taylor was next with a term of 491 days, so he made it over a year.
Yeah, he got into a bad batch of cherries, supposedly, and got food poisoning.
Yeah. Now, the fourth shortest term was Warren Harding.
Warren G. Harding.
President for 881 days, so he made over 2 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And then Gerald Ford
Gerald Ford.
took over from Mr. Nixon.
Mr. Nixon.
Shortest 5. He was round out the shortest 5 with a term of 895 days.
Yeah.
He was a good guy.
He was.
Gerald Ford was a
Fell
good
down
man.
plane stairs a lot.
Yeah. Well, and look at the humor that he provided on Saturday Night Live from Chevy Chase.
I liked his speech when he first when he first was sworn in. Our long national nightmare is over. I love that.
Yeah. But he was a good.
He said
was a
exactly
good
the
man.
right thing.
He was a good man.
Yep.
Absolutely. Okay. So anyway,
All right.
that's enough of that because Trump's not going to get impeached anytime soon.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Nope.
And he's already lasted. How long has he lasted? He's got
He's
3
100
months
plus
in.
days.
100 plus days. There you
I
go.
mean, there's a lot of smoke there, but they're really going to have to come up with something a lot more solid to get it that far.
It's a
Well,
ways to
yeah.
go. Yeah.
Plus,
so let's.
the House has to impeach. I don't think
Yeah.
there's a
No.
flavor for
He's
that.
got at least 2
And then
years.
the Senate has to uphold, and I don't think there's
Yeah,
a
I mean, the
flavor
bar
for
is-
that, so.
The bar is obviously
High.
pretty high
Yeah.
for a good reason.
Okay. So everybody calm down.
Yeah.
Let them. If they find out something, they find out something, and
Yeah.
we'll deal with it. So
Right.
anyway, that's enough of that.
Okay.
So, Greg, you've been researching and
I have.
digesting and
Yep. For
doing all kinds of stuff.
For several reasons.
Tiny homes.
Tiny homes.
Tell us all about them.
It's a huge, well,
They got TV
it's
shows
a
about.
large trend. They have the 3 that I can think of is Tiny House Big Living,
There you go.
Tiny House Nation, and Tiny House Home Hunter.
3 shows.
Yeah.
Just on tiny houses.
Yep.
On HGTV alone.
Right. It's a coming trend.
Okay.
And the reason I got interested, well, a couple of reasons, and I'll get into them, but one of the reasons I got into it is because, as you know, I'm on the National Association of Realtors Flood Insurance Task Force.
Yeah, you're big honcho.
Oh, yeah, sure, right.
Yep.
But they're talking about flood insurance, of course, and the
Okay.
rates. And Florida is one of the more progressive states allowing planned unit developments, communities of tiny homes for retirement.
That makes
folks.
sense.
Yeah. And they're coastal.
Yeah.
Most of them are in the Panhandle, part of Florida.
People want to be near the water.
Yeah, and they want a small,
Hey, I'm out. I'm going down to the beach. I'm
Yeah.
going doing whatever. I don't need a big
right.
house.
So they buy a house, a tiny house that's a couple hundred square feet, but their flood insurance is the same as any other residence.
Uh-oh.
And they're finding that the annual flood insurance rate is like a third of the cost of the house or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
it's sky high, and so that's an issue.
Yeah.
So that's what got me thinking about it recently.
Okay.
My wife and I have a house on down south along the river, and we built a small house. It's certainly not a tiny house. Tiny houses are generally thought to be 600 square feet or less, with the average about 200 square feet.
Oh,
My kitchen is 200 square feet.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, small.
So this is like smaller than I would say a normal 1-bedroom apartment in Bismarck.
Yeah, yeah.
Or the same size or smaller.
So we have this small house, and we were thinking, we want to add a detached garage to our site, a couple, 2-stall garage or something. Maybe we'll put a guest loft
Sure.
above it.
Nice. Yeah.
So we started looking at that, and we started thinking about that. And I think we're not going to, but, So then my son-in-law has been fascinated with these for a while. And he bought a lake lot on a lake east of here, kind of out by, it's I can't think of the name of the lake, but there's a big church camp on it, and it's Crystal Springs.
Okay. Oh, sure. Yeah.
And so they bought the property, and then he wanted to put a small cabin on it. And so he started this tiny house. And he's been working on it. He found a plan that he liked online. They adapted it to what they want to do. And it's they were able to do things there that they couldn't do in a town because there's no zoning issues.
Okay.
So the house they built is 14 by 20.
Okay.
280 square feet. It has 2 sleeping lofts, which add another 160 square feet. So it's about 440, which is big for a tiny house, but it's a tiny house.
Okay.
And they finished it, and it's really, really cute.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of wanted to be off the grid with it, and that kind of stuff. But as he has 2 children, one's a daughter who is now like 12, and a wife who likes some amenities.
Okay.
And
so much for off the grid.
Well, it's not off the grid, but it has a little bathroom and a shower in it, and they've got a tankless water heater, and they heat it with one of those radiant heat electric fireplaces. When they need it, and they have air conditioning, and so and they have rural water hooked up to it, so it's really nice. But it's only for the summer, and it's built on piers. It actually looks like one of the hurricane homes you see in Florida, set up on concrete.
Oh, okay.
Piers off the ground, which is a real sturdy house because the wind can go under, over, around. Yep. So they're not hit by wind and all that stuff. So it's really, for what they want to use it for, it's really nice.
Mm-hmm.
They're already talking about at some point they want to add another bedroom on the, so they're not crawling up into a loft to sleep. But as it grows, it's going to be a larger, but it's still a tiny house.
Yeah.
And so I found that interesting. So what is morphing into small houses, and how big is this trend? So I just thought, let's check it out.
Yeah. Okay.
So I started looking. So your average tiny home, like I said, is 150 to 500 square feet. Some go as high as 6. Mm-hmm. You get over 6, they start calling them small houses.
Okay.
Well, so there's 2 kinds that they do this with.
Is there a little bit of snobbery involved here?
Yeah.
If you're getting over 600 square feet, that's not a tiny house.
You're not a tiny house.
That's a small house. That's a small home.
You're extravagant.
Okay.
They're kind of a modern version of a homestead cabin.
Okay.
1 bedroom, kind of. They're small, central living. Yeah. Of course, a homestead cabin, the idea was you lived there until you could build something.
Yeah.
That you could live in. But these guys are sticking with it. Some of the homes, if you look around Bismarck, that were built from 1890s, there's a couple of them still standing that are turn of the century up to the 30s in, not so much downtown Bismarck, but close, like over on 12th. And there's one up on 16th.
Yeah.
Pretty small houses. And then down on Bowman and Sweet that are still around. So a small house is not unusual. So this is kind of a recurring trend, but these things are really cool.
Yeah, okay.
And we'll get into those. We're going to talk about the good things and where they're happening. And then we'll talk about some of the realities.
Okay, that sounds fair. Yeah, it's interesting that you get above 600 square feet and you're a
house.
You're back to a home.
Yeah.
This isn't a tiny house.
Tiny house living.
There's rules here, folks. There's rules. Okay, so we're going to come back on Dakota Housing Network and talk about more tiny houses and going out the Beatles' 50th anniversary of Sgt. Pepper's, and this is a day in your life, folks. All right, we're back on the Dakota Housing Network. Dave Flohr with Greg Larson.
Hey, here we are.
Jim Walsh running the board. Yo. That was a day in our life.
Day in our life.
50th anniversary of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album. One of the greats of all time. All right.
Yep.
So we are talking, if you want to call in and ask about tiny houses, 663-1270. Greg's becoming an expert here. So
yeah, probably more than I thought
I
was going to be.
So tell us more, Greg.
All right, so we're talking about tiny homes. What's the deal about them? There are some real advantages.
Yep.
Generally speaking, they're less expensive to build.
Mm-hmm.
They're easily built. The wait time isn't as long. It's a new culture. People downsizing, minimalizing, getting rid of their stuff, more free time, that kind of stuff, and we'll get into that. But so where can you put a tiny home? Well, there's 2 kinds. One, they put on wheels. Generally, they build a flat or take a flatbed trailer.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And build on it, and that's called those mobile ones have to be licensed as an RV.
Yeah.
Anywhere. The restrictions are they have to be self-contained or they have to be built to be going into an RV park, much like a fifth wheel trailer.
Okay.
So that's really kind of what they are, is a trailer, or a camper, but designed more for permanent
200 square feet. There's some
Airstreams that make
bigger,
that look bad, or
yeah.
some fifth wheelers. Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
So if they're on an RV, the advantages of that are they can pretty much go anywhere within limits.
Yeah.
You can go. You can some places you can rent a lot to put them on. You can use an RV park.
Mm-hmm.
You can mooch off a friend.
Yeah. There you go.
Which I find is a lot of people are putting these on parents' properties, but they're mobile.
Yeah.
So if they change jobs, they can take their home with them, and they're on wheels. It's difficult to get those things winterized, just like any other RV.
Sure.
So in the wintertime, they're a little restricted in where they can go. They're a little more restricted in, you still have plumbing issues. You still have all those issues. So they have to be hooked up somewhere, or they have to have a holding tank, or they have to where you have to pull them out and set them up, or
it's an
have
RV
a pumping service, right? Or a composting toilet, which has issues of its own.
Yeah, it's an RV.
Yeah, and so they can go park where an RV can go if you can get them licensed as an RV, and that depends on the state.
In the state, yeah.
On the state. Right.
So you could get that done here in North Dakota,
Yep.
and then you end up going somewhere else
well,
that doesn't allow it.
If this is your home state and it's licensed in this state,
then you're okay.
As an RV, then you can take
good.
it like an
Okay.
RV.
All right.
Many of these things are heavy, though, so that you're not. A lot of folks have to pay someone to haul them.
Okay.
Which is an issue. Or you can put them on a foundation.
All right.
If you put them on a foundation, you need to meet the zoning requirements, the building codes, and all of that. And if we have time, we can get into what the building code problems are. And there's a movement, by the way. It's in the United States, every state can wiggle with it a little bit, but they really use International Residential Codes, IRC.
Right.
Okay, so IRC doesn't have anything about tiny homes. It has nothing about changes in plumbing or changes in electrical, or in that building code. Any portion of your house that's occupied has to have a minimum ceiling height of 7 feet. Throw away the sleeping lofts.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
all right. So you end up. The locals have to deal with something like the local entity would have to deal with somebody that wanted to do this. Yeah.
Or you're building them out of town, on property, and that's another thing. But so you got to meet the building codes and the zoning requirements, and it's very difficult to get zoning requirements approved. I mean, you can't just plop a tiny house in a residential neighborhood.
Yeah.
With the exception, like the earthquake homes we talked about in San Francisco, but they were there.
Right.
Yeah.
There was a real need for that at that time.
Right.
Yeah.
And so those are some of the issues, but the concept of tiny house living is a good one, and it's a growing thing. And so there's an effort now, and they're going to rewrite next year the IRC codes, and they're going to try to write some tiny home codes in there.
Okay.
The other way you can do it, so you can get what we talked about before, mother-in-law's, build a small living area in your backyard.
Which the City of Bismarck now allows.
Is approved. It's allowed. It's called an accessory dwelling unit.
Oh, okay. A fancy name.
Okay. If you can get the permit for that and all of that, and as we've talked, there's some lending issues with that. There's some insurance issues with that. But if you can get that solved, you can do that. And they call it ADU, accessory dwelling unit. And those are good. And now what's happening is you've got planned unit developments happening. Now, planned unit developments have their own zoning laws. They have to get it all approved. They have waivers on some of the building codes. Like I said, everyone deals with the IRC, but then they tweak them themselves.
Right.
And so you got to get the community to tweak your codes to have a tiny house development.
So if a builder in Bismarck wanted to do this, they'd have to go to the city.
Yep.
And say, this is what we'd like to do, and we need to make this adjustment to the
Actually,
Building
that's
Code.
happened in Bismarck.
Okay.
A builder by the name of Jerry Rudnick built some homes in the north end of Bismarck.
Yep.
When he built them, they were right on the edge, where he had to get a waiver for the square footage allowed, for the size of the lot allowed. He had to have detached garages on them, And those things went like hotcakes. I
Yeah.
mean, they're very but what happened is the people were buying them as retirement homes. And these weren't the entry-level homes you thought they were going to be. They turned out to be small luxury homes.
Yeah. Yep.
And so
because I think his plan to start with was
affordable small
affordable
housing.
home, and then his market came to him and said, "Well, we want all this."
The market
And,
changed his mind.
Hey, okay.
So, so planned unit developments can work, and this is the trend. Like, for instance, the city of Detroit has got a planned unit development that is being half paid, and I don't know how they do it because they're broke, but the city of Detroit is paying half, and the developer is paying half, and then they're going to be sold back to the city of Detroit as low-income housing, single-family units. And it's a land grant kind of thing. I mean, the people will be able to eventually buy this little home.
Yeah.
You know, and they're going to do 700 units. The first 9 are done, and they're averaging about 250 square feet.
Okay.
So, city of Detroit is doing that. We've talked about Florida. They're zoning for planned unit developments, retirement units that are contained. It's kind of like a condo. You pay a fee. They do all the exterior maintenance. They do your lawn, and it's designed to be a short, a winter living home condo type thing, but a single family, kind of like a change room at a beach house.
There you
have
go.
those little rooms you could go in and change at the beach.
Yeah.
And they're running into, as we talked, some flood insurance issues, and they're running into some of that. But it's happening there. State of Colorado is allowing these things, kind of out in the country a bit. But so that's happening there. San Francisco has had earthquake homes. They're allowing more of those types of homes to be built. We talked about the program in Bismarck. And the manufactured housing industry is getting into this.
Oh,
big.
Okay.
Down in the southern states, they're
build smaller.
They're doing smaller luxury manufactured homes set in a development. And I don't know if you rent the lot or how that works, if it's condo lots or whatever. But they're picking up on this. And I looked at some of those online. They look pretty nice.
Yeah.
But Tempe, Arizona is working on these. And doing planned unit developments. But Tempe has done this forever. If you drive through old Tempe, you'll see all these developments that are smaller. They're single-wide manufactured homes with a carport and an awning and a deck. And so they've been around there for years, and now people who want to build a tiny home, because you've been able to park a tiny home in those for a while. It's on a trailer. So that's, what's going on with tiny homes. So they're a good deal, and they're fitting a need. I have a cousin who has a condo lot in Minnesota and in Arizona. And he's got a camper, larger camper, but a camper on both lots.
Oh.
And he just drives back and forth.
Sure. Okay.
But if they're in Arizona and they want to go to visit someone in Texas, they just hook up and go.
Yeah.
But they own the land that it sits on. They don't rent it, and that's been a really good deal for them.
Yeah. That's
So
super.
there's all those good ideas. It's a good idea that's coming back. As we close this section, I want to tell you also that New York City has allowed now tiny apartments and tiny condos.
So they're like 100 square feet?
Well, yeah, but I mean, I got a good friend that has lived in New York for a long time, and he owns it now, but his first apartment, they call them apartments, but it's a condo, he owns it, was like 280 square feet. So it's not a new thing. They used to call them walk-up flats or cold water flats.
What's the rent control like? I know they've been chipping away at it for years now.
Well,
is it any less ridiculous than it used to
No.
be? Yeah, it's still pretty bad.
It depends on where you're at.
Yeah.
I
I had a brother who lived in Greenwich Village years
Yeah.
ago, and we used to swap stories when, what's his name, was the mayor, Ed Koch.
Ed Koch.
He had a rent-controlled apartment in Greenwich Village for like $350 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rent control.
College kids shelling out $1,000 a month for some hole in the
The
wall.
rent control apartments are kind of going away.
Yeah.
All right. So are we going out, Jim?
Tony Bennett.
Tony Bennett. Why Tony?
He's going to be in Fargo tonight.
Oh, he's in Fargo tonight.
Yes.
That's right. Fly me to the moon then.
You got it.
All right.
He's got a
We'll be
start
back on the Dakota Housing Network.
Right now, 76.
Here's Sean Hannity, weekday afternoon
Records on Super Talk 1270.
Oh, back on the Dakota Housing Network with Mr. Tony Bennett's playing in Fargo tonight at the Blue Stem Amphitheater.
Yes.
If I'm not
He's
mistaken.
90-something years young.
He's a good dude. Yeah, you hear that record he made with Lady Gaga?
Yeah.
That's pretty
It
good.
was good.
Good stuff. She's a good singer. He's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we're back on the
homes.
Dakota Housing Network. Dave, along with Greg and Jim, as always,
Yep.
and we're talking tiny houses.
Tiny houses and the movement.
In the movement, and we were talking about all the positives. Now,
All the good things.
Now Greg's got some.
Well, let's just take one of the things I noticed when I'm
Bad
doing
things.
these reading is they keep trying, and I've read it in a couple of blogs and Tiny Home Living, which is kind of their National Geographic of tiny homes. It's sort of the flagship that gives you all the good stuff, you know.
It's the website or
It's a magazine and a
magazine
website.
and a website.
Yeah.
Oh my
And
goodness!
they have tried to compare the advantages of tiny home living to conventional homes and housing. And as I read it, I know enough about conventional housings to kind of see through some of the fog.
Yeah, you got a little knowledge in
And,
that area. Okay.
Honestly, they shouldn't do that. It's really not fair to the tiny home.
Yeah.
Because if you look at everything, they absolutely make no sense at all.
Yeah. Okay.
So
what do you got?
here we go.
Clear the fog for us.
Clear the
Greg.
fog. All right, we
Okay.
talk about some of the issues of where you put them.
Yeah.
You know, where you can put them.
Yeah.
And where you put them, and a couple people have tried to hide them, gotten in big trouble, and they've done some comparisons. But here's the things that you need to consider, and I pulled these off that tiny home living
There you go. Okay.
deal. So this is what they're saying. Things to consider before you get into a tiny house. Life functions.
Okay.
Where are you going to get your mail?
Okay.
Where are you going to do your laundry?
Yep.
What are you going to store?
Yep.
Long-term water and wastewater issues, shopping, food, year-round access, permanence. In other words, if you're on a trailer, how permanent can it be? If
Right.
it's, if it's a mobile one. So all those things to be considered. The biggest issue in the northern climates and in the mountain climates, like in Colorado, is you have no storage for emergency stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay. Yeah. Where are you going to put?
Yeah.
Well,
Like-
even put your shovel.
Yeah, if you in Bismarck, if you live across the street from the grocery store in the wintertime, you still have a week's worth of canned or frozen food in your house.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that you can get through a blizzard.
Yeah.
All right, you don't have room for that
No.
in a tiny house, so you have to make those plans. Where are you going to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And they talked about all kinds of solutions. Build a cache, dig a hole, line it with whatever, and
Okay.
build a cache. That kind
Okay.
of stuff. But so those are issues: the long-term water and wastewater issues, year-round access, and the permanence. The next one is legal trouble.
Okay.
Big issue. It's an unspoken issue, but it's a big issue. That's meeting the local zoning and code requirements. What are the ways around it? Is it an RV? Is it an accessory dwelling? Is it a planned unit development? And people, folks that tend to tiny homes, some of them are a little, they want to go off the grid. They don't want to do conventional.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's been stories of several folks, I'll just hide it up in the woods.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Yeah.
Folks, there's folks in jail, literally,
Over this.
for this.
Okay.
And there's abandoned tiny homes up there that other people are squatting in now that they're getting in trouble. So it's, you just can't go up in a national forest,
Throw
folks,
it
and
up
park
there.
your tiny home.
Yeah.
It's not going to work
Definitely
for you.
not on federal land.
Right.
Don't be doing that. Or
so
state land.
There is an issue that you want to solve your legal problems before you
Okay.
go off and park a tiny home. The clutter reality. It's a reality. To live successfully in a tiny home, you've got to be a neat freak.
You got to be organized, and
Yeah.
everything's got a place, and
Right.
that's where it goes back to.
That's
and-
right.
Yeah.
And keep it clean.
Yeah.
'cause-
Yeah, because you could get cluttered really fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that wears on people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
So
the
so if
need
you're
to be constantly cleaning and putting away. You can't really leave a glass out overnight.
so
Not
if
a
you're
good option for
You know.
hoarders.
Not a good option
No.
for hoarders. Another huge issue with this is forced intimacy.
Oh, I can't get away
yeah.
from you.
Yeah.
Oh boy, Diane would probably have a problem with that.
Yeah, definitely she would. But there's no way to get away from whoever you're living with. Your
Yeah.
wife, your family, you know.
One of you catches a cold, the other gets the cold.
That's
You
right.
pass it
You're
back and
sharing
forth.
everything. And a lot of issues with small children.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to give them a timeout.
Go to your room.
Oh, I'm in my room.
Well, you know, you'd have to get inventive and come up with another solution.
Yeah, and that's one of the issues that people come up with.
Yeah.
I mean, that forces people out of their tiny homes.
Yeah.
Is that health issues? We talked about that. But you're in a tiny home, your bedroom's in a loft, you break an ankle.
What are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
There's no alternative to your living
Because you probably have a
space.
tiny couch in your tiny house.
Yeah. Yeah. So
And I'm 6'3", that would not work for me.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's one of the other issues. And they talk about plumbing issues, become huge issues. And there's a whole litany of them. I'm not going to go into them, but just think about it.
Yeah.
Not just dealing with getting the water there and getting the wastewater away, but plumbing issues as you normally live.
Yeah.
There's not a fan strong enough not to deal with the odors. I mean, everybody shares them. That kind of stuff. I mean, there's just a whole ton of plumbing issues.
Oh, you get used to that.
Okay, sure you do. And we talked about health issues. And then I love this one. It's lifestyle proclivity.
Oh, now don't be using these big words.
I stole it.
Proclivity.
Yeah.
What exactly does that word mean?
Who can successfully live in a tiny home?
Oh, okay. All right.
It's
Bachelors.
interesting. That surprised me. You know who successfully lives in a tiny home, and they've been around long enough. People can study. If you're a home decorator and you like to live in your house, and you like to do this, and you like to have your little garden,
Not going to work.
you're not successful in a tiny house.
No.
There's not enough space.
No, and there's nothing to redecorate.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not going to move the couch
Yeah.
because the couch is nailed down. You know that. Kind
I
of
had an efficiency when I lived in West Virginia
Yeah.
a few years ago, and I was still unmarried, or I'd been divorced. The point is, I
You were
was
in
single.
between.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It was one of these places where you had the basics of furniture and you had a Murphy bed that came down.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I mean,
Sure.
you know, when you're a bachelor, all you really need is a place to hang your hat.
Yeah, you don't
And,
cook in house
You know, yeah, exactly.
for the most part.
For the most part.
I got a sandwich.
I mean, there was a little kitchen area. I had a few things, stocked in the fridge for emergencies.
Yep.
But, that's all I really needed.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of person or
Yeah.
family is most successful
Yeah.
in a tiny house. People who use their home for sleep and eat, and then they're gone.
Yeah.
And they disappear. And then everything needs to be downsized. There's no room for sentiment.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can't save grandma's shawl.
Yeah.
And so those are the deals. The last one is isolation. There's a lot of stories about people who I think it amounts to cabin fever.
Yeah. You're in
Yeah.
a tiny space, and especially in a climate that
Oh, yeah, in the winter
where
especially.
you're not
Yeah.
getting out all the
You get up
time.
to here and snow.
Yep.
I mean, I go nuts anyway in my place with my wife when
Yeah.
it snows.
Yeah.
I
Right.
can't get out.
So that's it. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is a comparison.
Yeah.
Now, this is tiny house living, again, tiny
Okay.
home living. They said what it costs to live in a conventional home and what it costs to live in a tiny home. They compared a $28,000 home that you build yourself that's a tiny home to $290,000 home. And they say your total cost of living is over $1 million for your conventional house.
Okay.
Not true. Here's the problem. If this is your home, your residence, and it's a tiny home on a small piece of land, you will not appreciate, you will not get the investment ability that you get in a regular home. They appreciate for 60% of the homeowners in the United States, it's their major way to build wealth for their retirement. None of that happens
Yeah.
right
As long as
now with a tiny home.
Yeah, and you keep it as a tiny home.
And so they talked about, the average homeowner has $5,000 of savings, and the average tiny homeowner has $10,000 in savings, but the average homeowner has $150,000 plus dollars in equity investment that a tiny
A
home
lot of
has
things
have.
to consider.
Something to
Hey,
think about.
We can revisit this topic later. I think
Yeah,
it's
it was
pretty
really
cool.
interesting, and it was
It's
kind of
pretty
fun to
cool.
do it.
So,
But-
anyway, folks,
So there you are. Tiny
Dakota
homes.
Housing. Next week we have Nancy Dykart and Tricia Schlosser from
Right.
the Board of Realtors
Yep.
talking about the market here and everything. And we are done. And we are going out with Tony Bennett, who left his heart in San Francisco.
In a tiny house.
On his
in
way
a
to
tiny
Florida.
house. I hope he brings it with him to Fargo tonight.
Super Talk 1270 KLXX Mandan, Bismarck. Listen anytime, anywhere, online at supertalk1270.com.